Western and Northern Europe are home to arguably the most developed and affluent countries in the world. These regions are also home to many people of Germanic descent. The Germanic people are believed to have originated in Northern Europe in the Late Bronze Age, roughly 1000 years BCE. Today, we refer to the Germanic people as speakers of any of the Germanic languages. These people mainly live in Western and Northern Europe. As well as sharing languages of similar origin, they're also quite close culturally and historically. What brings out an interesting question, though: what if the Germanic countries united? The first instinct is that this would create an extremely prosperous and economically powerful union, and given the recent global predilection of forming alliances, a Germanic union is by no means unthinkable. A union of these so-called Germanic countries would bring together highly modernized and democratic societies with an impressive range of economic strengths. But before we look at what such a union might entail, let's clarify what exactly are Germanic countries. A country whose people speak a Germanic language and have cultural and historical links to the Germanic people should be considered Germanic. These countries might include Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, the Netherlands, Norway, Iceland, the UK, and Liechtenstein. The Germanic languages are a branch of the Indo-European language family. They include West Germanic, such as English, German, and Dutch, as well as North Germanic, which includes Danish, Swedish, Icelandic, and Norwegian. The Germanic people are thought to have originated in northern Germany and southern Scandinavia, in Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, to be specific. They were especially dominant in Europe from the Iron Age in roughly 1500 BCE until at least 700 CE, when they defeated several Roman armies. These people were migratory by nature, and their influence spread across much of Europe. They were particularly dominant in the 5th century when they invaded Britain and expanded as far south as Spain. These tribes shared linguistic and cultural similarities that have lasted until today. English is by far the most spoken of the Germanic languages, as it shares the same roots as many of the others. The Germanic tribes settled across much of Western Europe, which eventually became the world's most influential and powerful region. There are several theories as to why this might happen. They range from industrialization to being able to master the use of gunpowder. Constantly feuding states also meant that development in science and technology were hotly pursued, with each country emulating the strengths of others. All of this meant massive expansions of their empires and a huge accumulation of wealth. This had largely remained the case right up until the present. Western European citizens live in highly advanced societies with strong economies, and they enjoy access to excellent education prospects and health systems. If these Germanic countries were to form a union, it would most likely further enhance their standard of living. Let's crunch some numbers and see what each country brings to the table. Economically, it's pretty imposing. The combined GDP of a Germanic union would come to over $11 trillion. That would make it the world's third biggest economy. Well, ahead of Japan's $4 trillion and only just behind China's $14 trillion. And it's not just the potential size of the combined GDP that's impressive, it is the range of industries. Here's a breakdown of the diversity and economic output from a Germanic union. Germany is highly developed in several sectors, including automotive, mechanical engineering, chemicals, and the electrical industry. By contrast, the UK has some of the world's largest service economies, specializing in finance and IT as well as manufacturing. Switzerland is renowned for its world-class banking and finance sector, not to mention highly developed precision tools such as luxury goods industries and whatnot. Belgium's a big player in the pharmaceutical, food and beverage, as well as chemical industries. The Netherlands has shaped its economy on chemicals, machinery, electrical goods, services, and tourism. Meanwhile, some of the northern European countries have made full use of their natural resources. For example, Denmark is a big producer of energy, life sciences, and agriculture. It's also the third largest oil producer in Western Europe and one of the world's top producers of windmills. With 98% of its power usage coming from hydroelectricity, Norway is free to export massive quantities of its oil and gas supplies. And then we have Iceland, with its robust aluminum and fishing industries. You get the picture. A Germanic union would bring together a group of world leaders in some key industries. In terms of population, the Germanic union would come to roughly over 220 million people. And that puts it at the world's 7th largest population, on par with Nigeria and just below Pakistan and Indonesia. This would be achieved without overcrowding or job shortages because each country already has its population under control. Northern European countries such as Norway, Finland, and Denmark would rely less on migration to boost their workforces and instead welcome other residents of the Germanic Union. These workers would most likely be similarly qualified with similar educational backgrounds. That's where most unified countries would really benefit. As it is, most are already in the EU, which allows them to travel freely between the countries. However, a special Germanic Union could provide them with even more perks. Members of the Union could be given preference to job vacancies or tertiary education enrollments. There might be special tax breaks offered to those looking to invest within the Union or conduct trade with a fellow Union member. This could be especially encouraging for Britain, as many of its citizens are still fuming over the decision to exit the EU. Although Britain can still apply to rejoin the EU, this wouldn't necessarily be a prerequisite for a Germanic union. Which brings up an important point. How would eligible countries for such a union be selected even? Who would decide which countries can enter, who can run the union? It would most likely be created if several Germanic countries came together and agreed upon forming an alliance for economic, environmental, and cultural reasons. Let's say, for example, Germany, Switzerland, the UK, and the Netherlands got the ball rolling. These countries have the largest GDPs, and they're the most influential of the Germanic countries. They could then invite other Germanic countries to either join or apply to join. This shouldn't be complicated, as the Germanic countries are already very familiar with one another both culturally and economically, and the incentive to join would be simple: to enhance trade prospects and economic growth of each member country. Preserving the Germanic culture might be another key factor. Collaborating on an economic front should be manageable, but maintaining a Germanic bond might be a bit more complex. If it were to be a truly Germanic union, then the historical and cultural aspects of these countries would have to be taught and appreciated throughout each member country. Perhaps the languages of each of the union countries could be offered in school syllabuses. This wouldn't include English or German, two languages that are already spoken widely throughout Western Europe. Lesser-known languages such as Flemish, Dutch, Swedish, and Danish could be incorporated into schools, universities, and workplaces. The various unique cuisines of each country could also be promoted within the Germanic Union. You could taste some Belgian mussels or Swedish meatballs in a London restaurant. Or perhaps when you're in Switzerland, you could sample some of the local potato cake. Or maybe a Norwegian mutton stew. Football, or soccer, is indisputably the most popular sport throughout Western Europe. It is played and watched by millions, and all of the potential Germanic countries do whatever it takes to make the World Cup. But aside from football, many Germanic countries also love other sports that might not be so well known in other countries within the Union. This will be another excellent opportunity to introduce something unique about each country to the other member countries. In the UK, for example, rugby is massively popular, but in Northern Europe it's almost unknown. Similarly, ice hockey has a massive following in countries like Norway, Sweden, and Iceland, but it would be met with puzzled looks in Manchester and Amsterdam. All of these efforts would build a deeper sense of connection within the Union member countries and an appreciation of the cultural distinctions. Integrating both economically and culturally would be essential to creating a union based on Germanic heritage. As for administrative matters, basing the headquarters in Germany seems like the logical choice. It wouldn't necessarily have to be one of the major cities like Berlin or Munich, who already have enough on their plate. Frankfurt and Stuttgart are two of Germany's biggest industrial centers, while others such as Bonn and Cologne represent a rich historical background. The common language may alternate between English and German, with non-German speakers, having to, get up to speed with at least the basics. On paper, uniting the Germanic countries is a real interesting proposition. It would create a deeper understanding and appreciation of the history behind each member country. And one thing's for sure, economically, a Germanic countries union would tick a lot of boxes.